Hello everyone. Today I am here with the Intimidating TBR Pile tag. This tag was created by Lindsay Ray. I have left the link to her video in the description. I wasn't tagged for this, but I, like every other big reader in the world, have a huge to be read pile. I think the idea of this tag is pretty self-explanatory, so let's just jump right into the tag. Question 1 is, what book have you been unable to finish? For whatever reason, you've started it and haven't completed it. And I feel like a lot of books in this tag are those books, but I would have to say that the main two books that I thought of were Neil Gaiman's and Nancy Boys, which is kind of a spin-off book of American Gods, and the sort of spin-off book of Gone with the Wind, Rhett Butler's People by Donald McCaig. The reason I haven't finished Nancy Boys has less to do with the book and more to do with the timing that I have continuously tried to start this book. I always try to start this book when I'm in a reading slump, thinking that it's going to get me out of the reading slump, but I've realized that the best way for me to get out of a reading slump is just to read comic books. That is why I haven't finished Nancy Boys, even though I really do want to, and I'm sure I will love it when I get through the entire book, but I just need to time it so that it's at a point where I can really enjoy it. The reason I haven't finished Rhett Butler's People is more to do with the actual text in the book. Now, when I started this, I was really intrigued with this, and I really did, for some reason, think that it was going to be kind of like Gone with the Wind, but from Rhett Butler's point of view or something like that. But in fact, it is literally about Rhett Butler's people. It's about characters that the author has created that are related to Rhett Butler in some way, and not always, you know, characters that we think of when we think of Gone with the Wind. And while that is interesting to a certain extent, I actually got kind of bored after about the middle of this book, because I kind of wanted to get back to the original Gone with the Wind characters and know what was going on with them, and I didn't always care about the other people that the author had created. I did go, oh, I'll just take a break and set this book down and get back to it later, but then I put it down and never picked it up. This is supposed to have some stuff in it that takes place after the book Gone with the Wind, so I do want to know how it ends to a certain extent, but I don't really want to start this book over from the beginning to get to that point. I'm seriously tempted just to like read the last few chapters of this book, just to know like the part that I care about. But I feel like that's such a cop-out. I'm very weird about skipping chapters. So we'll see if I ever finish Rhett Butler's People. Number 2 is a book that you haven't finished just because you haven't had the time. And for that, I have chosen King Lear. I did intend to read Shakespeare's play, King Lear, this month, but I just haven't had time this month to read it the way I want to read it. I have like a system where I really like to like find a good dramatized audiobook of the Shakespeare play and listen to it while I'm reading, because that makes me understand it a lot easier because it's kind of being acted out for you. So I haven't had time to do that. I'm hoping to do that soon though. Next is a book that you haven't read because it's a sequel, either because you didn't really enjoy the earlier books or because you aren't into reading a sequel at the moment. For this, I picked a third book in a series, and it's Fallout by Ellen Hopkins. So this is the third book in the Crank trilogy. I bought all 3 of these books in ebook, and one reason why I haven't read Fallout actually has to do with the structure of the ebook, which actually was missing pages in it, and that makes it less fun to read it. So I would actually have to find, you know, another version of it or buy it in physical copy. And the reason I'm kind of reluctant to do that is because I did find the second book, Glass, kind of frustrating. The nature of the books is that the main character is addicted to drugs. And when you're an addict, sometimes you slide and fall back into it. I really hope that the second book was about her getting over her addiction, but the second book was kind of about her backslide into addiction. And I know that it's kind of based on Ellen Hopkins' daughter and things like that, and what kind of happened with that experience, even though it's fictionalized to a certain extent. So it's like, I understand it, but it was so frustrating to read that I don't know if I can, you know, commit to reading that third book, even though I have it. Next is a book that I haven't read because it's brand new. I just bought it. My rule for myself is that I'm not going to buy new books unless I'm going to immediately read them, because otherwise, you know, the to be read pile just sort of accumulates, and I have a ton of books that I've bought and haven't read, and I need to like get to those before I buy any more that I'm not going to read right away. I do love buying new books that are cool editions of books that I've already read, and the last one that was like that was the annotated Little Women. I have read Little Women, but I haven't read this cool annotated version. It's got really cool photographs and art and historical information about the author and the time period, and I find that so interesting. So I do really want to reread this book with that element, but I haven't gotten to it yet because I just got the book a little while ago. Next is a book that I haven't read because I read a book by the same author and I didn't enjoy that book, so I'm kind of hesitant to pick up, you know, another book by that author. And even though I don't own this book yet, I am open to reading this book, and it is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Nevinger. Is it Nevinger or Nevinger? Please tell me in the comments. It's been driving me crazy. I read her book, Her Fearful Symmetry, and I did not enjoy it. I didn't deeply hate it, but the arc of the story and kind of the way it was laid out just didn't work for me. Thus, I've been kind of on the fence about starting The Time Traveler's Wife, even though I've heard really good things about it. And the one thing I did sort of like about Her Fearful Symmetry was the writing style. So I feel like maybe I would enjoy that one a little more, but I just kind of am scared to pick it up just because of that bad experience. Then we have a book that we haven't completed just because we haven't been in the mood. And the book I picked for that was The Watch That Ends the Night by Alan Wolfe. This book is a really cool concept sort of book. It's written in poetic verse, and it is about different historical figures and different fictionalized characters on the Titanic, and it also includes poems from the point of view of the ship and the iceberg in it as well, because I did read a few pages of it, so I do know that about it. I'm really intrigued to read this book, but the only reason I haven't picked it up is because it is sort of focused around the Titanic. So somehow in my mind I've kind of built up that this book might be depressing, and thus when I think about picking it up, I go, do you really want to read something that might be depressing? But sometimes you're just in the mood to read something a little sad, so if I get in that mood, I will definitely pick up The Watch That Ends the Night, but it hasn't happened yet. Number 7 is a book that you haven't read yet because it is massive. It is just so humongous in terms of length. And I would say for this, Under the Dome by Stephen King. Now, I've heard a lot of great things about it, and I really do want to read it, and my mom has read it and spoke how fabulous it was, but it is rather large, like a lot of Stephen King books can be. I feel like maybe I would be more inclined to start this book when I've already, you know, met my goal for my Goodreads reading challenge, or I'm only, you know, reading one book at a time at the moment, because usually I read like 5 or 6 books at a time, and then you're less inclined to want to pick up something really long. So maybe at that point in time I will pick up Under the Dome. Next is a book that you haven't read because you bought the book for its fabulous cover, but then you heard that it had really poor reviews and you were like, I don't know if I'll read that. So I don't really ever buy books for their cover. I mean, I can appreciate a fabulous book cover. It's not that I can't, but I've never bought a book just for that. I have, however, bought books for a really good title and a really good summary. If the title is good, it will suck me in. And a book that I bought for a great title and a great summary was the book Entwined. Now, it does have a really nice cover, I would say, but I definitely picked it because it was a fairy tale retelling about the 12 Dancing Princesses, and that really intrigued me. I hadn't read anything like that, so it was on sale and I bought it on ebook. However, not that it has really bad reviews. It's got like maybe a 3.5, maybe a little over 3.5 stars on Goodreads. So that's not really bad. I mean, at least people think it's okay. But the people that I've heard talk about it or maybe didn't like it that much said that it either wasn't what they were expecting or that it was really slow. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to read something that's possibly going to be really slow. So it just keeps moving lower and lower on my to be read pile. It's not that I never want to read it, but I'm kind of, I have to be in the mood to maybe possibly be disappointed. And it's like, Number 9 is your most intimidating to be read book on your shelf. And I have a couple for this. One is Atonement by Ian McEwan. And the writing style does intrigue me, but it is also kind of one of those writing styles where he really is telling every increment of, every single moment. So I feel like it's not going to be super easy to get into, but I do want to read it just because I really enjoyed the movie. I want to see how they kind of compare, and also I am sort of intrigued to see what's going on with the characters' thought process, because it does talk a lot about that. So I hope to finish it someday, but it is kind of intimidating because you're like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna like this. Lastly is Le Morte d'Author by Sir Thomas Malory, which I'm always pretty sure that I've mispronounced this title, but whatevs. This is just intimidating because it's quite long and it doesn't really have, modern English. It wasn't written to be written the way we modernly talk. It has no dialogue because it's almost written with a historical kind of text flavor. So that's the only reason it's intimidating. Now I am reading this. I'm just reading it really, really slow because, at least it has short chapters and it is something that I like to pick up, every once in a while. So that is it for today's video. I am going to tag anybody else that has a really giant to be read list and wants to do this tag and finds it interesting. So anybody that wants to do this tag can do it. And I will see you all next week. Thank you for watching. Bye!